USCHO.com.
Welcome to USCHO Weekend Review for Monday, February 20th. Each week we look back at the highlights of the weekend and the news of the week. This podcast is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Secure your seats now at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley. Well, we had been talking about how late in the season it had gotten with no regular season champions clinched. 3 conference champions were crowned over the weekend. Even though Minnesota dominated Penn State on Friday, it was already in the bag from results on Thursday between Ohio State and Michigan. And the Golden Gophers clinched the Big Ten crown, also a 3-10 overtime win on Saturday. This is no surprise. They've been kind of opening up some space over the last few weeks.
Yeah, we saw this coming, and it's good for the Gophers. I mean, they could have done it, I believe, a week before against Wisconsin, lost a game up in Madison. But this team's cruising, and that I thought that game on Saturday, the overtime game, 3-2 victory for Minnesota was a fantastic hockey game. But Friday was the aberration. I think it was a 6-0 lead before the halfway point of the game for Minnesota. They obviously were hungry just to put their flag in the ground and say, okay, we might have already clinched a Big Ten title based on other results, but we want you to know that we would have done it on our own anyways. And just they kind of swatted the fly away. But then a really good Penn State team on Saturday, I thought, and Minnesota still found a way to win.
And I think the one thing that gets lost, and I know it was brought up a little bit on the internet, is what a big weekend for Logan Cooley. He had a big night in the 7-2 win. Coming back to Pennsylvania, I believe I read that Arizona's GM Bill Armstrong was in the crowd, and he had a great weekend as a Pittsburgh kid coming back to play in Pennsylvania against Penn State. But we knew, like you said, we knew this is coming. It could have been. I think we knew Quinnipiac was coming. I know we'll talk about that. RIT, the bump that they had, we knew that these were all were coming. And I think that the next ones are going to be the challenging one. Big thing right now, 44 days to the Frozen Four. Let you think about that for a little bit. It's coming quick. And there's going to be a lot of stuff that happens in the next 44 days that we're just going to probably shake our head at. And 44 days, and you know what? Maybe 47 days. You got to deal with me.
Unfortunately,
is that unfortunately that you got to deal with me for those 47 days, or unfortunately that I'm done in 47 days?
Jury's out.
Well, we mentioned Quinnipiac. I saw the photos. They beat Yale 5-1 on Friday. The Cleary Cup was there on hand for them to receive. And this, again, like Derek said, no big surprise. There's going to be really a battle for the last home bye in that league between Colgate and St. Lawrence. It's down to them. The other 3 have already clinched home ice in that. But, Quinnipiac has rolled right from day one.
Breaking news. They gave up a goal.
Oh, you stole my line. That's what I wanted to say.
A hot take. They gave up 3. I mean, averaging 1.5. I mean, 3 goals in the last 4 games. I think we talk about it all the time. We talk about it with Michigan. We talk about it with those offensive teams. This is a team that's got their D rolling right now. Was it world beaters that they were beating this weekend? No. I mean, you see Yale and Brown down where they are in the standings, but congratulations to Quinnipiac. I think this was probably this and Minnesota were the ones that were the one that not shocking.
Yeah, you stole my thunder there, Schools. I mean, I was going to talk all about the fact that they finally gave up a goal. I mean, listen, this is the Quinnipiac train right now, and it's running. They had an early season loss to Maine. They had a bump in ECAC play. Other than that, they're near perfect. This team is just rolling, and we'll see what the challenges are once they get to the NCAA tournament. Can they get back to the Frozen Four? I believe their last Frozen Four was in Tampa, where they lost in the national title game to North Dakota, 2016. So warm weather, obviously, is something that agrees with with that team. So we'll see if they can get back. But right now, the way I look at this team, I don't see a way to stop them. Maybe in a single elimination once they get to Lake Placid. A team like a Cornell or a team like a Harvard could knock them off in a single game. Even St. Lawrence, the way they're playing, that was a great win for St. Lawrence over Cornell on Saturday night. So it's not a foregone conclusion that they're going to win the postseason, Quinnipiac, but they're rolling, and this is as good as we've seen a team roll in their league in quite some time.
You mentioned the 1-0 win that St. Lawrence had. What an exciting 1-0 win! I mean, that was an exciting hockey game, and went back and forth, and that was an exciting win. And Jimmy, I know I stole your thunder, but I kind of stole it from your Monday 10 this morning. So I plagiarized.
At least we know that people read stuff.
I plagiarized your column. I didn't put it in print, but I stole it from you.
Well, just as long as you don't plagiarize the comment section, we're all going to stay friends. The other team to clinch the overall seed and the inaugural Robert DiGregorio Trophy was RIT. They beat Bentley 4-0 on Friday to get halfway there. On Saturday, before the game was done, Canisius had beaten Sacred Heart, so the Pioneers were out of that. One more point in overtime for Canisius on Sunday gave the trophy to RIT outright. Two quick things on that. RIT has taken points from other teams, won the series against other teams, against everybody except Air Force, who they split with early, and they play the Falcons this weekend, and a sweep at the hands of Niagara. But I think you have to point to sweeps of Sacred Heart and AIC earlier in the season that really were the difference.
Well, you're going to see in this, and I've had a couple conversations with other coaches in the league, you're going to see, like, RIT has been beatable lately. Ever since we talked about them about being in that 16 range, they've kind of struggled a little bit. I'm not to take away from their championship. Anytime you win a championship, put a banner up, great job. Congratulations to Wayne. They were not a team that everybody picked to be the number one. And arguably Wayne Wilson will be coach of the year in Atlantic hockey. But I think this is as wide open as you'll ever see. I think you could see a couple upsets in the first round. I think you could see some surprises in the championship game. And I think this is as wide open. Air Force, in my opinion, and I watched them a lot, I saw them in person, they're kind of the hottest team and were until this AIC weekend. They were on fire, and they're not going to make the playoffs. Sad that two teams that are playing pretty well right now in Bentley and Air Force aren't going to make the playoffs.
And I look for some of these first round matchups. I know it's hard to tell who's going to play whom, because you have a Holy Cross kind of holding on to that last home ice spot.
I think anybody can still catch the Holy Cross.
Yeah, I'm just looking at that. You're talking Mercyhurst is only 4 points behind, and they're in 8th place. So you can't see who's going to align against each other in the first round of the playoffs. But I think I agree with these schools. I mean, I don't know if we're going to see big upsets in that first round, but we're almost undoubtedly going to see some 3-game series out of it. It's just that close, especially. RIT, yes, I feel like they kind of did run away with it, but Sacred Heart has shown that they're obviously able to be taken. AIC has not had the season that they have the last couple. They're kind of ripe for the pickings. Holy Cross is defied a lot of expectations. Army tough to play against. Canisius showing that down the stretch they're tough to play against. Niagara's had some good wins down the stretch, and Mercyhurst is probably the one team that might be kind of limping into the playoffs, more than anybody. By the way, congratulations to Rick Gotkin, coach's 1,200th game on Saturday. Only the third coach to ever do that at the same school, joining the likes of Red Berenson and Jack Parker. Rick Gotkin, I know Rick, he's a pretty humble guy. And I think he would say, I never thought, Jimmy, that I'd ever have my name said in the same sentence as Jack Parker and Red Berenson. But Ricky, congratulations. Hats off to you.
I texted him after that when I saw it online, and here's his response. As you know, I've been hanging around a long time. And then it goes into the good news is about being along. He's been able to become friends with some great people. And Rick is as humble as always. But you're right. Congratulations to that. And I think Frank Serratori coached 1,100 games on the weekend as well. So there's a lot of people. I had this conversation with Eric Lang. There's a lot of this people that have been at the same school a long time in Atlantic hockey. I mean, I've been in Pittsburgh 20 years, believe that one or not. I mean, there are a lot of them. You got Riles and Ryan Soderquist and Wayne. And I speak of them in first names, but I mean, these are some of the who's who of college coaches, and with Rick and Frank and Wayne, personalities as well.
Yes. And I'll give you just a contrast. And that is something that makes Atlantic hockey kind of a unique league, because I was calling a game on Saturday night, Providence against UMass Lowell, and you had the two deans of hockey's coaches, Norm Bazin and Nate Lehman. Nobody has been at any hockey school longer than two of them. We've had. I think when they came into the league, they had Jerry York, Jack Parker, and Dick Umili in the league. They're all gone, and now these guys are taking over as the deans of hockey's coaching.
Yeah, I guess if things work out, we all get old eventually, right?
Unfortunately.
Well, those were settled, but there are going to be 3 more champions to crown. Probably only one coming up next weekend, and it'll definitely be one of these two teams. Minnesota State now leads Michigan Tech by 2 points, and will face the Huskies twice this coming weekend. The Mavericks split with Bemidji State. They lost on Saturday. We talked about how that Friday game was a big one. They have just that 2-point lead coming into the ultimate battle for the league title this weekend. Great scheduling by Don Lucia and his staff.
We've been saying that all along here with the schedule makers, what a great job they did this year. But good for, Bemidji went and took some points, which makes that Michigan Tech series and Minnesota a lot tighter than it could have been. Minnesota State could have had, I think, up to a 4-point advantage or a 5-point advantage. So that's a good portion of the points. So they don't have to sweep or anything like that. You could really see a really good weekend and series. And do you pull your goalie in certain scenarios if you're behind? I mean, those are questions. Like, you don't have to be scoreboard watching. The scoreboard's right in front of you. And I think we talked about the top 4. How about Northern Michigan this weekend against Ferris? They've just made a little statement that they're not out of being in that 5 game. I think it might be hard to catch Bemidji, not out of the question, but Northern Michigan made a statement as well as jumping up. I think I had said it, and shame on me that the 4-5 game was locked in. I didn't expect a 6-point weekend for Northern Michigan, and they did it convincingly too.
Yeah, what makes this weekend between Minnesota State and Michigan Tech so interesting is that if the Mavericks want to clinch a championship now, they have to take at least 5 points. 4 points against 2 would be a co-champion situation. So you did mention pulling the goalie of those schools, and I will tell you this is from the Jerry York School of Hockey, because we had this situation in Hockey East. This is going back a number of years, but on the last night of the regular season, Jerry York was playing UNH, Boston College UNH. BC had to win the game. This was long before 3-on-3 overtimes and shootouts. These were only 2-point games. They needed 2 points. They had to win the game. And it was said on the broadcast, he's got to pull his goalie if he wants to win. Well, Jerry York also knew that he was on the PairWise bubble at that point. And both of these teams, Minnesota State and Michigan Tech, are right around that PairWise bubble. So if you want to pull your goalie in overtime and potentially lose a game, as opposed, I know you could win it, but if you lose a game on a pulled goalie situation in overtime and you're on the PairWise bubble and that drops you down, boy, that's one that you would never forget. So I know that it makes sense to maybe pull the goalie and try to win that league title outright or something like that. Or, if you're in the boots of Michigan Tech, you might need 4 points. You got 2 on Friday and you're in overtime on Saturday. You need the win. don't worry about that. I think you can try to get those 2 points in a shootout or something like that, because you don't want to lose one of those games with a pulled goalie situation and maybe jeopardize your NCAA tournament hopes.
Those are all good points, but I think you mentioned at the beginning that the Mavericks needed 4 points. Then it's Tech that needs 4 points, not the Mavericks. It's the other way around, correct?
So I guess you're right. Yeah, I said, well, if Tech gets 4 points, then it's a tie. Yes. So I guess you're right. The Mavericks need at least 3 points. I did say 5 at the beginning. I had it backwards. So they need at least 3 points. Minnesota State would to win outright, because that would maintain their lead. But if it was a 4-2 situation, then they, in favor of Tech, then it would be a co-champion situation.
Interesting. If Tech wins the first night, that's where things really get interesting.
Yeah, well, then they're saying all we have to do is get to overtime.
Correct.
Because once you're in overtime, you get 4 points. Then if you get through a shootout and win a shootout, then you get the title all to yourself with a 5-point weekend. So
a shootout for a championship. Wow, where have we heard that before?
We'll get to that.
Boy,
Ed just shakes his head at us when we throw something off script that he knows he's going to get to eventually.
No, I just, the idea of shootouts deciding anything makes me think of a bunch of soccer players lined up protecting their lower regions.
The funny thing though, I know that you're okay. You went something like that, but that's always, this is where you're going. God, if we would have only won that game in October. God, we had, that's where we always say the games in February, the same as this is where you're going, you kick yourself, because you always have those 1 or 2 games, and you do. But then again, so does every other team. But that's, as a coach, you're going, I wish we could have got that 1 point, or wish we would have, not given up a goal late and lost a point here.
Well, that's where it drives me nuts when people say, oh, they really backed into that championship. No, all the games count. And that October game was just as important as the last game you played in that.
Yeah, we won a regular season championship in our last year. I remember I was at a restaurant watching Niagara play Canisius and being a Purple Eagles fan. And that's how we won one. I mean, all the games matter.
Well, there are a lot of games that matter still in the NCHC with 2 weekends to play for everybody. But Denver, who is in first place, and number 2, Western Michigan, are going to face each other this weekend. Denver's got 5 points on the Broncos right now after a 6-5 loss to Minnesota Duluth, which keeps hanging on in all this too. So there's still probably the final weekend, depending on how things work out. Could be the final weekend that determines all this.
Yeah, well, schools talked about writing off Northern in the CCHA. I wrote off every other team in the NCHC except Denver. I think I had already started previewing my Denver-Miami first round quarterfinal series in the NCHC, because it just seemed like a sure bet. But give it to Minnesota Duluth. That was a crazy game on Saturday. 11 goals scored, swapping of lead changes, multi-goal leads, getting wiped off the board. But Scott Sandlin's team, proved it that they can beat anybody in this league. And it's all what team comes out and plays. And they found a way to win that game on Saturday night. And that has kind of delayed the destiny for Denver. And now you're in a situation where Denver's heading to Lawson this weekend. And if they get swept, they'll head into the final week of the regular season in second place. I mean, that's crazy. I did not see anybody catching Denver. And now the fact that they could get caught with, in the second to last week of the regular season in a really tough place. I mean, we've talked all season about how difficult it is to play in Lawson. And every coach from the NCHC that we had on talked about how difficult it is to play in Lawson. And here you have Denver and David Carl's team heading into Lawson, needed to take points out of there. A split would be great, and they'll feel great about a split, I'm sure. But if they get swept, that's serious business right there, to think that they could go into the final weekend, playing catch up.
It's crazy that we're talking about Minnesota Duluth getting hot and having some big wins at the end of the year, isn't it? It's crazy. And, you talk about Western Michigan. They also, after their Western Michigan, they do have a rivalry series, home and home with Colorado College. So it is emotional coming down the stretch here. And Colorado College, if there's points available, they don't want Denver to clinch on them, especially on their ice with that rivalry with the gold pan that they have going. So I think it's going to be exciting. I think we got some good schedule making going on. You got Denver going to Western, perfect timing. Denver, Colorado College rivalry, and I know why they do it. They don't want a lot of travel that weekend, and that's great. But hats off to all the schedule makers this year.
In the way that Chris Mayotte's team is playing, the thought that if Denver was in a position where they were trailing heading into the regular season finale weekend, you could see Colorado College, splitting that series with them. That's not out of the realm. I know there's a lot of emotion that goes into those games, and Denver has fared well this season, but I wouldn't be surprised to see an upset there.
Well, let's look at Hockey East. Last week, we were talking about a couple of teams that could finish anywhere from 1st to 10th or 2nd to 11th. That's narrowed down a bit, but the real straw that stirred the drink this past weekend was Merrimack sweeping BU home and home overtime on Saturday. So 5 out of 6 points for the Warriors. So Northeastern is in first place. BU and Northeastern right now, the favorites in that, but Merrimack is still in the mix too.
Yeah, Merrimack has one less game to play. The final week in the regular season, they only play a single against Vermont. They'll play Lowell twice this weekend. But suddenly Northeastern here, this is a team that was really struggling at Christmas time, and they've played really well down the stretch. Devin Levi is playing his best hockey right now. Gets another shutout on Saturday night up at Vermont. The Merrimack series, I think, really turned a lot of heads. We knew that Merrimack was a good team way back in the first half of the year. But since Christmas, since the new year, they have really not played well. And to find a way to win at home on Friday, listen, that's a tough place to play. Merrimack's not an easy barn to play in. And they haven't had the home cooking of late. They've played a lot of road games after a ton of home games to start the year. But then to go into BU, take a lead, fall behind 3-2, rally for the tying goal. And then one of the most interesting endings to an overtime I've seen, BU goes down in a breakaway with about 25 seconds left. A great stop by Hugo Olis. And then the play transitions to the other end and BU takes a penalty. And you would just expect, there's about 12 seconds left in overtime. You'd expect Merrimack just turn the puck over so you can get at least a 10-second 4-on-3 power play. Instead, Merrimack keeps playing. BU looks like they kind of got into a situation where they were like, okay, we know that they're just going to turn the puck over. Well, they didn't. Merrimack kept playing. They end up getting the extra attacker on the ice. They score an extra attacker goal with 1/10 of a second left. And suddenly you have a 5-point weekend for Merrimack. So it was an interesting series. It really has kind of set up just a hodgepodge at the top. You have the race for first place, and even a team like UMass Lowell is still in that race. But at the same time, Lowell, they're going to play Merrimack twice and Northeastern twice to end the season. Tough games. They're now not just fighting maybe to win the regular season, which is still a possibility, but they're also fighting just to get that last home ice spot in the quarterfinals. So it will be a crazy ending to this Hockey East season. Not unexpected, because every time you think a team is supposed to win in Hockey East, they don't. And every time you kind of just say, well, this is an easy series to pick, it doesn't go the right way. And I talked to Steve Metcalf, interviewed him on Nesson on Friday night, and he admitted, the fact that there's been so many upsets this year has brought this league. It's made it very exciting for the league in the regular season, but it has brought it to a point that the pairwise does not favor Hockey East right now. You still would have 2 teams in if the season ended today. But even that's tenuous. Northeastern's right there on the bubble. So it's been a little crazy in Hockey East, and I guess we're not surprised at this ending.
Well, the interesting thing that both these teams are going in opposite directions. Northeastern was at 40 and now climbing. Merrimack was up at 4 or 5. Now they're dropping, but Merrimack technically you could see a league champion not inside the PairWise bubble. I mean, literally, if they end up winning and get some help, and I mean, I think that they might climb, being 19, they might climb up, but gosh, when have you ever seen that? You're going to see the Hockey East, a team that's playing for a Hockey East championship, not in the NCAA tournament as of today. They're within 2 points.
The old Colorado College rule from whatever year that was, 1990.
94. Yeah, yeah.
Right. Yep.
Like I told you, I've said this before. We were at Western Michigan. We were the beneficiary of that. So I'm always in favor of letting it fly, because that's what happened with us. We were the team, and eventually Colorado College didn't get in. But there we are. I mean, you could see the league champion not inside the bubble, and there's still a lot of hockey to be played. And it's all going to be taken care of on the ice. But you see two teams completely going in the opposite directions from, like you said, Christmas time. Northeastern's climbed, almost 25 spots, and Merrimack's dropped almost 15. I mean, those are pretty drastic elevators.
Well, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to do a little bit of buy or sell about teams on the PairWise bubble.
All right, let's go. Buy or sell?
Yeah. Plus some Beanpot and a little bit about the outdoor game in Cleveland. USCHO Weekend Review is sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida.
All right, class, it's the NCAA Men's Frozen Four. Welcome to Fandom 101. Want to help your team rule the rink? Here's your assignment. Lesson 1, go big for every goal. 2, when you bring it, bring enough for the whole class. And 3, attendance is encouraged, but passion is mandatory. The NCAA Men's Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Buy your tickets today at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. Class dismissed.
We're back with USCHO Weekend Review. I'm Ed Trefzger alongside Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley. Gentlemen, buy or sell, PairWise bubble. Simply put, will the team make the tournament? Yes or no? And some of that can factor in league tournament and so forth. But sitting where they are right now, will they make it or not? Buy or sell, and maybe a reason why alongside that too, just so we can prove we've thought about it a little bit. A couple at number 19 in Hockey East. We were talking about them in the first segment. Merrimack and UConn, buy or sell on the Warriors and the Huskies?
I'm selling on both of these. I think both of them would have to win their conference tournament. I know that they both have a path as an at-large. I think they would have to win their conference tournament. Even if Merrimack gets the 2 wins against Lowell this weekend, wins against Vermont, the final game, I don't think that does enough. And then you're talking only really one opportunity at that point before you get to the Garden to improve. So I just don't see Merrimack getting there. UConn's even further behind, even though they're tied in the PairWise, and the RPI is the tiebreaker right now. I think UConn has an even longer road to get up there. Right now I look at the numbers, and it actually says that UConn has a slightly better chance. I have them at 27% potentially. Merrimack at 20%. Am I reading my numbers right? I am. So 11% to get in as an at-large for UConn, 9% to get in as an at-large for Merrimack. Those are pretty long odds.
I'm glad Jimmy let me borrow his calculator for this, because my Western Michigan education I need a pencil for what we got going, and an eraser. I'm with you. We would have both all probably been buying at Christmas time, correct? And now we're selling. Maybe
on both of them, definitely on Merrimack.
Yeah. And now we're selling. I'm with you. I think they got a long road ahead. And I see a lot of people that are, we're going to talk about other Hockey East teams as we move forward in this, but I just think that the road's too far for these two teams.
Yeah, I'm with you both on selling on both, but if I wanted to be a speculator, the one team of those I would buy is Merrimack, especially after this past weekend. They are a team that has shown they can pull an upset, and a couple of upsets in the Hockey East tournament. Really only need one upset, really.
But it
could get them in there.
This is where Jimmy said something. They only got one chance to improve leading up to the Garden, and that would be at home, and that would be against a lesser opponent. Then when they get to the Garden, they're going to be a 1, 2, or 3 seed most likely, and they're going to be playing somebody lower than them. They got to win a couple games. I mean, they almost have to win out. If your calculator's correct.
Yeah, if they win out and don't win the Hockey East Championship, I have them at about 71% to make it. That's still nothing sure about that.
If you're looking at the whole picture, not just the pairwise, I think that they are the team most likely to pull an upset in the Hockey East tournament
and maybe win the thing. You're saying,
right?
That's fair.
Gotcha.
That's fair.
I see that.
Well, let's look at number 18 right now. Michigan State, their regular season is done. They're sitting at number 18 in the pairwise. They've had some brilliant stretches, and we were very excited about them at midseason. It's been a little difficult down the road. Again, this is a team that would need to pull some upsets along the way in the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, I think one of the concerns for me is that they're right at 500. So I guess there's no way for them to move up in the pairwise without winning a few games. So I guess that would pull them above 500. So I don't think that they can be in a position that they will lose their at-large bid because they're below 500. If they're not going to be inside the top 15 if they're below 500. So that was a concern of mine. The more I think about it, that's kind of leaving my mind. But I still don't see them doing enough. I don't think that they can win the Big Ten tournament. I'll start there. I have them just as an at-large, about a 21% chance. And then, give them a chance in their conference tournament as well. I don't see them winning the Big Ten tournament. That's just too long of a road to get through. So I got to sell on Michigan State.
I'm gonna say something. I think they're going to win their first game, and it's going to be their first playoff win in the Big Ten history for them. I think that's going to be something they do, but I don't think that they've got enough to get in the tournament because I don't think that that's going to be enough to do it because I don't think they're going to win the Big Ten tournament. So if we're talking NCAA tournament, I think they've got one more win left in them. They'll end up 500, but I don't think they're going to make the tournament. I think 14 might be in trouble this year. I think the 14 seed might be in trouble this year.
Could be. Yeah.
So that's my thought process behind it.
I will say that if they make the Big Ten final, I give them a pretty strong chance. They'll have done some good things to get there, right? They're going to have beat some teams that are, way ahead of them.
You got to be 15 anyway. You got to be 15 because Atlantic Hockey winner is going to take the 16.
For sure.
So
yeah.
I don't know if they get to. I don't know if they get to 14.
Get up to 15, maybe 14 if they get to the Big Ten final and lose to, say, Minnesota. But now I guess they'd probably have played Minnesota to get there. When you really, yes. I believe they reseeded that tournament, so they'd have to probably, got at some point played Minnesota to get there, likely. So I don't know if they end up beating Minnesota, say in the Big Ten semis. Yes, I'm going to say that Michigan State then makes it to the NCAA tournament.
Well, and what Derek brought up about where the cutoff is, it could be if you see a combination of somebody like a St. Lawrence or a Colgate pull an upset in the ECAC, and you see a Bemidji or a Bowling Green in the CCHA, then you're starting to move that line up to number 13, and then it gets tough.
Or a UMass Lowell or UConn or. Right. Listen, any of these hot teams,
Merrimack,
the way Maine is playing in Hockey East, any of those teams in the single elimination format can certainly get there as well.
See, I think I'm gonna say 14. I'm not gonna go to 13 as high as Ed just thrown up, but I think you're gonna see you're gonna have to be at 14. I think you're gonna see enough.
So you're saying one upset?
Yep, one upset. Atlantic Hockey takes the 16, one from there.
Well, let's look at Alaska. if they win out, they still need some help and few upsets to make it in. Is this a buy or a sell?
Oh, I think it's a great storyline, but I've got to sell. They could, they took care of business this week. They came back. They were down 3-0 to LIU, scored the final 6 games. So they're playing with some good desperation. They get 2 against Arizona State this weekend, which won't bolster their RPI much, even if they win on the road. And then they close out, I believe it's Lindenwood at home. So I love the storyline. I think it's fantastic. And, there is, if they win their final 4 games, they could be a 22 win team. I think I'm right. 22, 23 win team, and not make it, but they did some great things this season. I'm really happy. And it's good to see that Alaska program getting their feet under them. I still got to sell. See, I shouldn't have given you the math, Derek. Now you're looking at the math too much. You could have just done this on instinct.
I'm looking at I'm looking at your calculator right now, and I don't think they sweep Arizona State. That's my problem. I love the story. I think they're gonna be there. Arizona State is healthy. I watched them play on TV the other night. They've got their players back. They are 3 games below 500. I know when I talked to Greg Powers this week, they want to be over 500. I want to root for them. I want to buy. I mean, there's another one that would take somebody else's, that would put that to 14. I can't do it. I'm going to sell.
Yeah, I'm going to sell, and for exactly the reason that they're at Arizona State. The Sun Devils got swept in Alaska. I don't see them getting swept at home. I think there's a lot of pride there. I think they've got some short-term achievable things for Arizona State and something to build on for next season. So I'd have to make that a sell. But this next one is tough. And this is a team that has kind of gotten itself back into the conversation, and that's Notre Dame sitting at number 16.
I'm going to buy on this one. I don't know why. I'm going on gut. I didn't even look at your numbers. I just feel that they're right there. And I never want to count out a Jeff Jackson team around playoff time. I think that they roll in at about 14, and I'm going to buy.
I think I just made there's Schooley side from the last one. I guess it's because it's almost the same reason that you had, Schools, because you were talking about Alaska going down to Arizona State. I'm worried about Notre Dame going to Michigan, and Michigan maybe being pretty pissed off because they didn't get the points they wanted this weekend. Michigan being really aggressive because they know they want the number 2 seed in the Big Ten tournament. I just don't know that Notre Dame's going to get the points at Michigan this weekend. And if that's the case, so if they lose 2 games and say that lets them kind of hang around and they stay right around 16 in the pairwise with 2 losses this week, they're 2 games below 500. Now they've got to make those games up. If they're not going to win the Big Ten tournament, they're going to have to make those games up. So what happens if they get a 2-1, quarterfinal series win? They're still a game under 500. Then they have to win the semifinal just to get to 500. So they'd have to advance. If they don't win this weekend, they have to get to the Big Ten title game just to be eligible. I think I'm still selling on Notre Dame. I know I should take your route, Schools, because I think that you're right. This is Jeff Jackson coaches his team well down the stretch. They get into these spots, they win. I'm not sure this time.
I went gut. You told me to stop looking at the numbers. You just made a compelling argument for me to flip, but I'm not going to. I'm stick.
Yeah, I got to sell on this one. It all hinges. Yes. It all hinges on Notre Dame being able to sweep Michigan at Yost, and I don't think that happens.
No, it's a split.
Even if a split would be fine. But then you've got to win at least one Big Ten series in the playoffs, or you're below 500 again. And you're going to be the lower seed on the road.
Well, I think if they also lose that quarterfinal round in the playoffs, they're
below 500. They're done.
They're below 500. They're done. I get that, but they're also they're also probably 16 or 17. They wouldn't have a chance in anyway.
Let me throw a scenario out. They split, they win one, and then what if they end up inside the pairwise bubble? And I don't know if this is even possible. End up at 15 below 500. They can't get in.
Considered, yeah.
I know they can't get in, but that just throws another kink in everybody's.
That was my whole point of that whole conversation there, Schools. Maybe you missed that part.
No, but I think they might. I think that could happen though too. I know that if you don't get in, if you're below 500, you don't get in, but it just makes another great storyline. There's so many good storylines to watch if they did end up at 15 and can't get in.
Cornell is at number 15 right now. A tough weekend for the Big Red this past weekend. Buy or sell?
Boy, they were locked, in my opinion. They were locked into this tournament heading into this past weekend, and then they get swept at home. Now they have to go to Brown and Yale. I don't think Brown and Yale are playing well right now. That'll boost them back up. At least get them. Right now they're at 15. They probably have to get to 14, 13. I think that Cornell gets through the quarterfinal series too, no matter who the opponent is. Mike Schaefer knows how to win those games. So now you're in Lake Placid, and they're going to be that team that probably, if they get to the finals, no problem. If they don't get, say they lose in the semifinals in Lake Placid, they're going to be the team that's going to have to root on Saturday for no upsets. Because I think they will at that point be the bubble team. So I'm going to buy on Cornell. I think they get in.
I'm going to buy. I think they got 4 wins in a row coming, which will climb them up a little bit. I think they got Brown and Yale. I think they take care of that. They get a first round bye, and they win in the quarterfinals. I think they've got 4, and I see them. As we've said all year, going a Quinnipiac Cornell final. And we've been saying that. We kind of forgot about Harvard a little bit for a while. I think we've got 5 straight in a row for the Big Red, so I'm going to buy.
Yeah, I'm going to buy too. And if you do have Cornell and Quinnipiac in the final, then that probably means that Cornell would have had to have beaten Harvard, which also helps them in the pairwise too.
At that point, they're set. If they beat Harvard in a semifinal, they're probably up to 12 or 11, and then they're in great shape.
Number 14, Northeastern. This is a fun one. Boy, we were wondering about them at the semester break. They are playing terrific hockey right now. Devin Levi has been just tremendous.
Let me throw some weird pairwise math. They were 40th heading into Frozen Fenway. That was January 7th. They were 40th. They've climbed the way up, and as of last Saturday, they were 15th. And then they were idle on Friday. I don't know what results changed that needed. They moved all the way down to 19th, and then they went up and beat Vermont 3-0 on Saturday, and now they're 14th. You want to talk about some pairwise volatility, and Jerry Keefe is probably sitting in his office every day, hiring every mathematician that he can get because he loves the pairwise numbers. They're in good position right now, and the way that Devin Levi is playing, I'm undoubtedly buying on them. I'm not even going to do the math. I'm not even going to look at the odds. I'm not taking my calculator out for this one. I feel that they are probably there. Right now the calculator says that they're 30% to get in as an at-large, but I think that they're probably going to make an appearance in the Hockey's finals.
I'm going to buy, and the only reason I'm going to buy, one, they've got the goalie. They're hot. But somebody's got to get in the tournament. We kept selling earlier, so I mean, somebody's got to win.
You've just bought on 3 teams, and there's only 4 at-large bids really left.
I know
from what we're going to talk about here.
Yeah, I mean, I was selling. I didn't buy on Alaska. I mean, I bought on Cornell. I bought on.
You bought on Notre Dame though, so
yep. So I got those 3. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I got one more to buy on, but
one
I think
out of 2.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you've got that one. You gave all the reasons why, and you know the league, and you've got your calculator out. So I'm gonna buy that one.
And a good advisor will tell you to diversify your portfolio anyway. Yeah, I'm gonna buy on Northeastern too, for all the reasons you said.
How many do you got left now, Ed? How many you got left, Jimmy? I mean,
I still have 2 left.
Yeah, I'm not saying that all these go, but if you're gonna,
if we're gonna buy you, if you know there's only 4 at-large spots left and you buy 5 teams, you're probably going to have a little 17 team field when you're all said and done.
We're hedging our bets. You guys run the betting site, not me.
This is the mutual fund of the PairWise. This is what this is. Number 13, Omaha. This is a fun one. I'd love to do the math, and we just won't take the time right now, but Omaha has to look at those 2 losses at the beginning of the season to Niagara. They'd probably be maybe 11, 10, something like that right now. Buy or sell on the Mavericks?
I don't really have a good reason to sell on them, so I'm pretty sure I have to buy. They're going to close out the season with St. Cloud State and North Dakota. St. Cloud State's at home. You hope that they pull out. You'd pull out a win out of there. Going to North Dakota, I guess the only way I would sell here is if they get swept in these last 4 games. And after, they're coming in, they're 4-0-1 in their last 5, even go back before that. And they're 9-1-1 in their last 11. They're playing good hockey right now. So I don't see a good reason to sell on them. But I throw that little caveat in. The one thing that could get them in trouble is going 0-4 down the stretch here. That would put them in a bad position.
I'm selling. I think that they've got a tough schedule. I think going into you got St. Cloud, who's right behind them in the standings, wants to climb, potentially could get up if Denver takes care of Western Michigan. They can get up into the 2 range if they do well. And I'm really scared for Omaha going into North Dakota in that last weekend. You've got a hungry team that's going to want to try to get, where they're at before the playoffs. I don't know. You told me I can only have 4, and I've already taken my Notre Dame.
Right.
So.
You're doing your math right at least, Schools.
So I mean, if you said, I would get rid of Notre Dame and take Omaha. I don't know. I can't flip on Notre Dame, so I got to sell on this one because I'm going to buy on the last one, so I'm screwed.
I want to buy
say that
this.
on the podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, you can.
Okay.
There's no FCC stuff here.
I said the word hell on TV 2 weeks ago. So.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
Wow.
It was a hell.
You would have been in trouble in the 1950s.
I would have. Yes.
And it was on cable also, right?
It was.
All right. You're fine. Don't worry about it. The FCC's understaffed anyway. Omaha, I would love to buy on them, but I have to sell. Unless they sweep through all of this, it's going to hurt them. Not so much against St. Cloud. They could get a split with them and be okay, but that could really hurt them against North Dakota. And at that point, North Dakota may not have anything to play for as far as league standings. It may not be a meaningful game at all, and they'll be in front of a crowd, in front of their fans, and just throw caution to the wind. So I
love senior night at North Dakota. I think they do it better than anybody, and they're not going to lose on senior night. I mean, they're going to have that pride for the seniors. See, North Dakota does. I mean, the pomp and circumstance, or whatever you want to call it, they do it. They do it unbelievable at North Dakota on senior night.
The last one, number 12, Minnesota State. They've got the big home series with Michigan Tech this weekend.
They'll take care of business. I feel good about Minnesota State, so I'll buy on them. No problem. Even if they lose one, if they split here, I still see Minnesota State moving through the playoffs. They'll probably be in the conference finals. They'll be hosting that game. So, I have no problem with Minnesota State here.
Yep, me too. I got one left, and there's only one left to go. So I'm buying.
Yeah, I'm going to buy on Minnesota State too. Even a split this weekend doesn't hurt them pairwise too much. Probably keeps them right about where they are. And they're a team that has had the momentum going in the right direction.
So I guess the only person who kind of went out on a limb here is me with Notre Dame. You guys all kept the as
I like
is.
chalk. I like chalk right now.
Yeah.
But Ed technically did too, because he only put in 3 teams in 4 spots. He did not put Omaha in, so he's thinking that there's going to be an upset in the conference tournament. So a team somewhere 20 or lower in the current pairwise will get in.
Yeah, I'm almost ready to buy Merrimack as that team, just based on what they have done we saw what they did early in the season. We saw what they did last weekend. They can do that again.
They can.
Well, speaking of Hockey East and one ECAC team, the Beanpot decided by a shootout last Monday. Yuck.
Blasphemy. But it's the rules, and I get it. The NCAA rules committee ruled that the Beanpot did appeal. I believe it was Jerry York that filed for an appeal while he was still coaching. But it was turned down. And why? Because everybody that's voting on that has nothing to do with the Beanpot. Nobody cares about it. The Beanpot only matters to Beanpot schools. And I get that. And if anything else, if you're around New England and you're recruiting against Beanpot schools, you're probably jealous of Beanpot schools. So if you have a voting, I don't know how the votes go with the rules committee and stuff like that. But if you have a vote, you're voting against it. So it was never going to happen. And it was a rule that was going to have to be followed. I don't see a way to amend it. I just don't see going forward. Somebody's going to say, oh, that was so horrible that we're now going to change it. I mean, listen, the players looked excited. I don't think that the coaches loved the way it was decided. If you talk to both Jerry Keefe and Ted Donato, neither one of them liked it. Schools, I know you hate it. I get it. I don't love it. I remember the days of sitting in the Garden until 1 a.m. on a Beanpot semifinal Monday, where you have a double overtime game in the first one, and an overtime game in the second one. And, second game starts at 10 o'clock at night and you end at 1:30 in the morning. But it takes away from you. We always talk about, and we're going to get into the next thing. We're going to talk about student athlete experience. It takes away from the student athlete experience to decide a championship in a skills competition. I called a game on Friday night. It was a regular season game. Maine UNH. UNH wins, and after the game, Mike Souza's asked about the game. He said, we played really good for 65 minutes. It was a great college hockey game, and thank God we won the skills competition.
So I'm in favor of the shootout, and I think you guys knew that. I'm in favor of the shootout.
Right.
The one thing I'm not in favor, and I was on the championship committee, so I kind of was hearing a little bit about this. They want everything uniform, just like they want uniform that they go 3-on-3 into a shootout, or you play 3-on-3. They want as much uniformity as you can get. And I would be in favor of how they did it a couple of years ago. I believe it went to a 5-minute overtime. They played the 5-minute overtime.
Got a result.
And if they didn't get a result, then they could go to a 20-minute overtime. That was the Beanpot rule. I believe that happened.
You knew the game was a tie at that point. So for the pairwise, you had
pairwise, it was a tie. Yep. And then you played for the real Beanpot title in the 20-minute overtime. I would be in favor of that on an exemption basis. I would not be in favor. You go to a shootout in a third place game, you get it over with. You don't stay there forever. I think that North Dakota, that long overtime game scared people.
Yep.
And I think that's part of the reason why that happened. I don't know the timeline, but I know that has scared people when you had all the people cramping up and for a regular season. Yeah. But I'm with you. For a Beanpot championship, something that has the big history. I mean, if you're talking the Three Rivers Classic, which has played 5 years, and we had to decide by a shootout, so be it. If you're at the Beanpot for however long it's been around,
70 years,
you play the 5 minutes, you keep the pairwise result, and then you go to 20 minutes. And I know people are going to disagree with that too.
Sure they will.
They're going to say, oh, we should just play 20 minutes. You can't. You have to have some uniformity. You do that, then you let them decide it however you want. Maybe they keep playing 3-on-3. Maybe they do it 3-on-3. Maybe they go 4-on-4.
If you want to play 20 minutes 3-on-3 like they do at the IIHF, we get a decision almost every game.
Yeah.
I do know that, you mentioned that cramping up thing from the North Dakota, I think it was Duluth game in the regional a few years ago. And there was actually a women's Beanpot game, I'm going to say like 10 years ago, that I believe went 6 overtimes. It was a semifinal game. And I remember talking to Joe Britannia, who was not only the Hockey East commissioner at that time, but he kind of de facto ran the women's Beanpot. And he talked about player safety in that. And I get it. At that point, you're in a regular season. You're now going to go back into league play 4 days later, play a game on that following Friday. And you've got players that may not be ready to come back because that game took so much out of them.
Okay, well, let's go 5-on-5 for 20, then go to 3-on-3 for 20.
Sure.
There's so many different ways you could do it. Yes.
There's ways of doing it without throwing it to a pure skills competition.
But right now, the rules say that they can't do it.
Right.
They followed the rules unless they applied for an exemption, which obviously they did.
They did and was rejected. So,
but maybe if they applied for a different one and said, hey, let's just play 3-on-3 the whole time, just like they do in the World Championships, just like you said, maybe that changes it. Steve, if you're listening, you're welcome.
The other thing about those games that go into multiple overtimes, you have to have Schenectady Gazette writer Ken Schott's picture at the doorway and not let him into the building if you don't want overtimes. The outdoor game in Cleveland between Ohio State and Michigan, great fan experience, 45,000 people, always a good experience for the players, but also, as we've talked about before, some ice trouble. What's everybody's take on this?
I know Jimmy and I had a different opinion about the frozen Fenway. I thought it was great. This was really well done. They had fireworks. They had sparklers shooting out of cannons after every goal. They did it well. They made a great production, great crowd, 45,000 people, still probably only 2/3 of the way full. But they did it outstanding. This is an event, and I see pictures online. I've got a goalie that played for me that's now a backup at Michigan. I see the pictures online. They did the family skate. They did it right. Student athlete experience, 100%. Great job. Ice conditions, awful. They struggle with the ice. They had a long delay. They came back and played again, and they had another long delay. I think the game took a lot longer than it should have. But I know, Jimmy, you've got some opinions on that. Unbelievable. They're going to remember that for the rest of their lives. And I watched it. I thought it was cool. They had some bad camera angles that they tried out. You see that all over the line. Great experience. But I think we came to it. Maybe sometimes it could be an exhibition game. But I'll let you talk. I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought the ice really took a damper from making it unbelievable.
Yeah, I've started to come around on these schools, especially one-offs. I think the one that was starting to get to me was when Frozen Fenway was every 2 years. And every 2 years, things got worse. The ice conditions looked a little worse every year. And I believe the first year they used Dan Craig. The second time they used Dan Craig. And if nobody knows who Dan Craig is, he is the man who is in charge of ice for the National Hockey League. He's the consultant that works the Stanley Cup Finals. He works all the Winter Classics. He works the Stadium Series. He knows how to keep the ice. And even I know that even he, from what I was told, had some issues at Fenway this year. I don't know how it was down in Raleigh this weekend where they played the Stadium Series game. But if you're going to do it, you got to be careful with the ice, because the last thing you need is a situation where a player gets injured. I don't know exactly how bad the ice was at Foxborough back in 2016 when Dena Lang, who was playing for, I believe it was the Boston Pride, lost an edge, went into the board. She's now paralyzed for life. I don't want to see more of that. That's one thing I worry about with these games. And people, I get what people will say. You could see that any Tuesday night at any college hockey rink in America. Yes, I get it. We had Travis Roy. He, didn't finish a check right, lost an edge, and it was paralyzed for his life. Rest in peace. Great kid. But I don't want to do that unnecessarily. But I'm coming around. I love the student athlete experience. I saw photos from that game. I didn't see the video like you did, Schools. I saw photos from that game and they looked fantastic. So I get the experience. I'm about this experience too. I do think you got to give kids some student athletes, I shouldn't say kids, but give some of these student athletes those special experiences in their college career. We just got to be careful with ice. Ice conditions can make this miserable.
We played an unbelievable game in Heinz Field in front of 5,000 people and 70,000 yellow seats. And it's still something that you remember for forever. And Steve Metcalf got to you. He got to you after the last one when he got you to come around. So good job, Steve.
Well, and I still think that these games shouldn't be for league points. And Ohio State got 5 out of 6 points on the weekend. They're in a tie with Michigan. They have the tiebreaker now in the standings with Michigan. And this one also throws in a weird little kink in the pairwise, even though it probably won't affect things too much. It's a neutral site game.
Right. You got to win on a neutral site as opposed to a home ice win for Ohio State. You're right.
But Ed, tell me, like you've kept quiet on this, and I know we're getting to the end here, and we got to do it. You broadcast the RIT Niagara game in a blizzard. Right. How cool was that?
It was more than cool. It was bitter cold too. We had a student. It was the
goddamn ice freezing.
We had a student.
Oh, we said now we're throwing out all those words out, Jimmy. I was in a torrential downpour, a hurricane. So you go to your blizzard.
Well, we had a student who was our ice side reporter because it was so far away to see everything. He was on the opposite side of the ice and reporting to us, and we would go to him and his teeth would be chattering. It was great. He says to this day he's never been so cold in his life.
You got 12 inches, didn't you, during that game?
We got quite a bit. They had to clear snow during the game, like in the middle of the periods. And, after the ice would be cleared, you got about a minute and a half in normal play. And then there was enough snow that you couldn't make any passes. And that was a league game. Yeah.
And you remember for the rest of your life?
I will. I hope I remember it. If I don't remember it, I won't remember anything else either. So anyway, that's it for this week's USCHO Weekend Review, sponsored by the NCAA Men's Division I Frozen Four, April 6th and 8th at Amalie Arena in Tampa, Florida. Get your tickets at ncaa.com/mfrozen4. Find our podcast at uscho.com/podcasts or subscribe on your favorite podcast app. For Jim Connelly and Derek Schooley, I'm Ed Trefzger, and this has been USCHO Weekend Review.